This Ukrainian YouTuber live-streamed himself illegally entering Japan's Fukushima nuclear exclusion zone and got arrested after broadcasting everything to his audience. And it's safe to say that what seemed like just another urban exploration video turned into an international controversy involving embassies, courtrooms, and debates whether Japan is actually way too soft on influencers who break the law for content. Because, you know, when your creative experiment ends with your own government apologizing on your behalf and a judge deciding your fate, it's clear that things quickly went off the rails. So meet Alexander Krakov, a Ukrainian content creator who runs the YouTube channel Kryosin with 6 million subscribers. And his content focuses on what he describes as creative experiments and extreme science projects. As we're talking about videos that show people how to pull electricity from train tracks, charge their phones using high voltage power lines, and other activities that should come along with a screaming, "Please do not try this" warning label, because it's safe to say they can go very wrong. And this video also went extremely wrong. But his channel kicked off back in 2011 when Alexander and some of his buddies tossed a foam can into a fire and filmed what happened. And despite the video being deleted, it got a few thousand views and they realized they might be onto something here. So in 2014, his subscriber count had got to a point that invited him to a creator festival in Moscow, where he learned about the business side of YouTube. And after that trip, he started shifting away from random dangerous stunts and moved towards content that was supposed to be a little bit more educational and practical. And the channel's popularity eventually got big enough to where Alexander could ditch his day job fixing televisions and washing machines to focus entirely on making videos. And nowadays, their content has evolved into a mix of survival tips for extreme situations and urban exploration. So as it turns out, this is not his first rodeo when it comes to off-limit locations, since, you know, he'd already pulled similar stunts in Chernobyl when he sneaked into the exclusion zone there and filmed inside the actual nuclear power plant. So by the time September 2025 rolled around and he decided to visit Japan with 2 friends, we could already guess where this was heading. So there were 2 other guys that traveled with him. The 3 of them set their sights on one of the most restricted and sensitive locations in the entire country, the Fukushima nuclear exclusion zone. And before we dive into what these guys actually did, we need to understand why this location is such a massive deal. I've actually gone over this before in another video where I talked about the French YouTuber who went to Fukushima to film an ASMR video. So if you want a more detailed breakdown on the whole thing, feel free to check out that one as well. But back in March 11th of 2011, Japan got hit with a catastrophic earthquake, which then triggered a tsunami, which then triggered a nuclear meltdown in the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The earthquake knocked out the electrical grid and the tsunami wiped out the backup generators, and the whole situation spiraled into one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. Because what followed was radiation spread across the region, forcing roughly 165,000 people to evacuate their homes. Some because authorities ordered them out, others because they didn't want risks of radiation exposure. And about 12% of Fukushima became a no-go zone, which means entire communities were abandoned practically overnight, with residents having just a few hours to grab what they could before leaving their home. And over time, some areas got cleaned up enough to reopen, but certain zones remained designated as difficult to return zones because radiation levels are still too dangerous to live there. The town of Okuma, where Alexander and his friends were arrested, sits right in the middle of one of these restricted areas, so entering there without permission is illegal. But when content creators treat these spaces like they're just another, interesting location for a video, it shows a pretty fundamental misunderstanding of what these places represent to the people who lost everything in this disaster. And here's where the problem started. So on September 23rd, 2025, the 3 friends made their way into the exclusion zone in Okuma and found an abandoned house to set up and started live streaming on YouTube. This was a bad mistake for them because the French YouTuber I covered, he wasn't caught because he didn't live stream. He just made the video, got out of there, and posted the video after he had left Japan. But the live stream footage showed them sitting inside of an empty house by candlelight, making tea and poking through personal items that had been left when residents evacuated over a decade ago. Almost like they were on some casual camping trip rather than illegally trespassing in a radiation zone. But while Alexander and his friends were busy filming their content, someone watching the stream was having a very different reaction. An anonymous viewer saw what was happening, recognized they were broadcasting from inside a Fukushima exclusion zone, and immediately called the local police station. So from there, police officers got to work using screenshots and the video from the stream to pinpoint the exact location. And by the morning of September 24th, authorities had tracked down the house and showed up to make arrests. When officers arrived to the scene, they found 3 men still inside the property and took them into custody on the spot. According to the police station, they admitted to breaking in during the police questioning. So they were formally charged with unlawful entry to a residence, but since this involved a restricted nuclear zone, the situation immediately became more serious than just an average trespassing case. So once word got around around about the arrests, the story spread quickly. Japanese media picked it up immediately, and within a day or two, international reports were running stories about these Ukrainian YouTubers getting arrested for live streaming themselves from a Fukushima exclusion zone. And it didn't take long for the situation to escalate way beyond just a legal issue and became a full-blown diplomatic embarrassment, because on September 26th, the Ukrainian embassy in Japan released an official statement condemning what the three men had done. The embassy called their actions unacceptable and issued a public apology to Japanese citizens who felt disrespected by the incident. They were also careful to emphasize that this incident shouldn't reflect poorly on how Ukrainians view Japan's support and friendship, especially in the light of everything Ukraine has been going through over the last few years. The former Ukrainian ambassador to Japan also weighed in personally on social media and posted that he was deeply sorry by the news and wanted to personally apologize for the behavior of these creators. And the whole situation also highlighted a growing frustration in Japan about foreign influencers who show up, ignore local laws, and treat their country like a theme park for their videos. And after the arrests, prosecutors moved forward in seeking actual prison time for the three defendants. They argued for 6-month sentences, pointing to the fact that this wasn't some accidental mistake. These guys intentionally entered a restricted zone, and they knew they were breaking the law, and they broadcasted the whole thing for the internet. However, during the court proceedings, one of Karasan's friends reportedly told the court that his goal was to show viewers how the Fukushima region was recovering since 2011. And he also said that he hadn't really thought about the legal ramifications of what they were planning to do.
I was never taught what laws there are.
Meanwhile, defense attorneys pushed back against this prison sentence, requesting fines or suspended sentences instead. And the first hearing took place on December 8th in the Fukushima District Court, and the case quickly moved through the system. And then finally on December 25th, the judge issued a final verdict. All three defendants were sentenced to pay fines of 100,000 yen each, which works out to about 650 bucks per person. And then they were essentially just released and could go home. So this is where the opinions split pretty hard, because that sentence sparked discussions about whether Japan went too easy on them. And a lot of people have been pointing at that, saying, hey, this is kind of a theme now. So while some people looked at the outcome and thought, hey, that was fair, they trespassed, got caught, paid a penalty, and moved on. They got stuck in the country for a while. Others saw this as way too lenient and worried it sends a message to other creators that Japan won't seriously punish any kind of behavior like this. According to a commentary article that came out about the sentencing, published in the Japan Times, Japan's approach stands in a strong contrast to how other countries in Asia have been handling similar situations. For example, we know these stories way too well, but Johnny Smalley in Japan basically got a slap on the wrist. In Korea, he's been stuck there for over a year and he's facing multiple years in prison. And then we have Vitaly over in the Philippines, who's been sitting in detention since April 2025 after live streaming himself stealing from security guards, breaking into restaurant kitchens, and just threatening random people. Both of them did stupid stuff and they're finding out. But obviously this didn't happen in Japan, so a lot of the criticism is saying that, hey, Japan is making their country a safer bet for IRL streamers or creators who want to go harass and break laws there. Because it seems like they don't really want to throw creators in prison for filming content like that. But obviously on the flip side, you could argue that the three Ukrainian guys didn't physically harm anyone, they didn't steal anything valuable, and mostly just made an incredibly dumb decision about where to film. It's one of those situations where both perspectives have some valid points, and definitely when you compare these three guys to Johnny or Vitaly, both Johnny and Vitaly were infinitely more disrespectful to the countries they were in than what these guys were, even though what they did was disrespectful and incredibly stupid. But as of right now, Alexander and his two friends have returned home to Ukraine, and what was supposed to be just, some compelling urban exploration footage turned into an arrest, an international embarrassment, and their own government publicly apologizing on their own behalf. I think it's safe to say that we're very likely to keep seeing content creators push the boundaries like this in foreign countries, and honestly, here at home as well. Because it was just the other day we covered a bunch of guys who were waving around a fake firearm in front of Big Ben. So, yeah, you can check out that video here. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.